websites that might help you, and we'll later give you the details. Also, it contains first part is for the matrix solver, which I have discussed now, and next is and in the next part we'll discuss about the high performance computing. So I'll start high performance computing now. Mr. Rahul Padi, if you can kindly make everybody present, Alex, except me. That will help.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Doing. Done, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let me share my screen. And we'll continue in the same mode that we are discussing, that during the presentations uh, during the presentations I'll make all of you as attendees, so you cannot put any comment or write anything. After the presentation is over, there will be an open forum, and all the attendees can ask questions there. You can unmute yourself and can ask questions there. Is my screen visible, Rahul?
Visible, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, in last class we looked about solution of differential equations, and we realized that there is a class of computer-based method for solution of differential equations, in which we convert the differential equation to the matrix equations, and there are different techniques for solution the matrix equation. Most of them are iterative solvers. However, for accurate solution, you need very defined mesh for which require large number of mesh points. Therefore, the matrix size is large, and also matrix solution methods vary widely. But we saw that Krylov subspace-based methods like conjugate gradient, etc., are efficient methods. However, much simpler methods like Gaussian Jacobi exist, in which the number of iterations are more, but the algorithm is much straightforward. Okay. And on top of that, we looked at in the matrix solution part, it can be accelerated using multi-grid method, preconditioners, etc. And when you look into the code of the solution, it is an iterative method. However, during each iteration, there are matrix vector products, and as we said, those are the most costly things of the calculations. And we have seen that these calculations can take very large amount of time, because depending on the number of rows, the number of iterations can increase, as well as the matrix vector product during each iteration can be costly if the number of rows are large. So we need to see how we can use high performance computing infrastructure for that. So why do we need to? And high performance computing is nothing but parallel computing. Many processors will in parallel work to get a job done. So why do we need to do parallelization? To reduce the computational time by dividing the number of operations into large number of computers or large number of processors. And also, if we do a distributed memory programming, instead of we discussed that instead of carrying a large load by many people, we divide the load into many small parts. So we divide the total problem size into many small problems, so that the RAM requirement is reduced. Each processor requires a small amount of RAM, and they can work on independently. So that is also possible. That instead of storing a large chunk or single chunk of memory, if we can break it down to smaller pieces. In some sense, it requires overall memory requirement that can be shown. Further, if you think of buying a 4 gig RAM, that is not expensive. But if you think of buying a 1 TB RAM, that is very expensive, and buy motherboard for 1 TB RAM, that is again expensive. Buying large number of 4 TB, 8 TB RAMs is easier than buying a very say 256 gigabyte RAM. for 24 gigabyte RAMs are probably less expensive than 256 gigabyte RAM. So in that sense, you reduce the cost of the machine as well as operational hazards if you can break it to smaller practice size. So there are two ways. One is we'll not break it into smaller problems, but we'll use many processors to look into the part of the problem altogether in parallel. Another is we'll break down into smaller sub-problems, and each processor will work on its own local sub-problem. And we have seen earlier that it is required because large-scale problems can really cost a lot in terms of memory and RAM requirement. So we gave this example that there can be some calculation which can take 317 years. So you need to distribute it among many processors and many computers so that it can be done quickly. So the basic idea again is the load can be too heavy to carry. There can be too much memory to handle. And the task can take astronomically long time that we have seen. So you have to break it down. So one of the idea is a shared memory idea, that there are many processors connected to a same memory space, and each processor is working on one particular location of the memory. So if you are working on a large matrix, some processors are looking into first 10 rows, next processor is looking into next 10 rows, so on, so that they can work in parallel and overall time constant. The other one is breaking them into many small problems. So instead of having a large matrix solver, large matrix vector multiplication, and break it down to small local matrix vector multiplications and finally collect them. And then there are different local memories. So we will not talk about a shared common memory, we'll talk about small local memories. However, there will be requirement of some communication by the processors, which will be done by an interconnect network. So whatever, in both the cases, what we need is distribution. We need to allocate different processor for working on different parts of the problem. So in some sense, load has to be distributed among all. There is requirement of some synchronization that they should do in total, they should not conflict with each other, etc., which is more in shared memory compared to the distributed memory part. And in distributed memory part, there is much requirement of communication among the processors, because it's the same problem which they are solving as small sub-problems independently. They need to communicate often and distribute data accordingly. So tasks like synchronization, communication, etc., our general programming languages, C, BASIC, Java, Fortran, etc., they cannot directly do these tasks. So we need some APIs for doing this, and these are MPI and OpenMP are two popular APIs. And for graphics card, similar type of task, but I have very briefly discussed. Tomorrow there will be more detailed discussion on graphics cards or GPU, and you will see that there we use something for an API called CUDA to take care of. So what happens in shared memory parallel program? Shared memory means there is one large piece of memory and many processors are connected with that. As they are working on the same memory, they don't need to communicate much because it's the same memory space they're writing, they're just changing data at some locations. But they need to synchronize so that there is less contention, less cache conflict, etc. In shared memory architecture, different processors are connected with a common address space. And there are different types of shared memory architecture. There are distributed processors, multiprocessors and symmetric multiprocessors. In case you have symmetric multiprocessor, it is the same memory, physical same memory space where different processors are connected. It can be also possible that different computers are there. So they do have physically different memory space, but virtually we connect them to a single memory space. But let us take the SMP example that we have a common motherboard in which a RAM is fixed, put down, and many processors are put into that. And all of your laptops are at least dual core. Some of you have quad core laptops, etc. These are different processors connected to same memory space. Concurrent instructions can run in different processors while using the same memory. So it's the same array, at different location of the same array, different processors can execute their operations, and that can be done concurrently. And there is something called cache coherency, another synchronization protocol that tells that synchronization is important here. One of the very popular programming model in shared memory computing is simple single instruction multiple data. It tells that you have a large data set. At different part of this data, different processors are working. Some processors are looking into first few elements of a matrix, next first few rows of a matrix. Next processor is looking into next few rows of the matrix, so on. However, they are essentially performing same instruction. It's the same instruction line, which is being executed by all processors, but at different locations of the memory. So on multiple data, on different data points, same single instruction is being operated. And as it's the same memory space, so there is no issue of mapping it to different location, exchanging data, etc. It's the same array whose different elements are being operated by different processors. This is a very popular model, and one of the idea of using single instruction multiple data model is a threaded parallelization. That there is in symmetric multiprocessing systems, what we discussed, that many processors are connected to the same RAM. Shared memory parallel computers and also GPUs, we'll discuss GPU later, but it's also in GPU. There are system support for the execution of multiple independent instruction streams. Independently, different instruction streams can be executed on this, and this instruction stream will use a data stream from the common address space. So on the same data, same address space, same array, same at different locations, different instruction will, and these instructions are independent. They will independently operate. This is known as thread. Threads run as the part of main program using SIMD architecture. Different architectures will not discuss here is also possible. So basically it is known as a single program multiple data model also. It's a single program which has a threaded region. Threaded region will be operated by different processors, and each processor will independently execute that line on different locations of the memory. So these threads may they will run independently in different processors too. But however, they need to synchronize at some point of time too. I said synchronization is important here. And this is an alternative. The other idea is message-based parallelism. So if I try to quickly discuss what is a threaded parallelism, probably this can be an example that we're talking about matrix vector multiplication. So we have a 3 by 1 vector, a row vector is little reversed with a column matrix will multiply. So we get again a row vector. So what will be the multiplication? First element will come as 1 into 7 plus 2 into 9 plus 3 into 11. Second element will come as 1 into 8, 2 into 10, 3 into 2. These two elements can be calculated independently. So if I launch a thread, first thread will multiply this and write it here. I can launch another thread which will multiply this and write it here, and these two threads can work independently, provided both the processors are aware. So if it's running in two processors, both the processors are aware of the entire information, that what is the multiplier matrix with which row vector it will be multiplied, then they can pick any of the thread and independently execute on the other processor in parallel can execute. So we are basically two processors simultaneously executing the thread. Therefore, computational time is reducing. It's not one by one the threads are following. So this is a very gross idea of threaded parallelization. And in shared memory systems, we in most of the cases we try to use threaded parallelization. However, if we look into any program which we want to parallelize, any program cannot be 100% parallelizable. There is a law called Amdahl's law which also discusses that not the entire part of the program can run in multiple processors. There are some part which is inherently dependent on other data and cannot run in parallel. So what happens that when we write a parallel program, it initially say I have to read a file. It is not in a serial mode, only one processor reads it. Then with the information it allocates some array. It's the allocation is again in the same memory, in the shared memory space. So it should be also done by a single processor. But then after allocation of the array, probably it's trying to populate these arrays, and there it requires to do it in multiple threads. Different threads will populate different parts of the array. So there is a fork. This is called a fork. That this thread, the serial program, the single processor program, creates a number of threads, and then these threads operate on this part. Again, when the parallel part is over, it has to go back to the serial part. The threads join and the serial program continues. So this is, in general, structure of any shared memory parallel program. A serial program forks into multiple threads, and once that parallel region is over, it again comes back and moves as a serial program. And how to create these threads, how to assign different threads to different processors, how to ask different processors to work on different parts of the data and synchronize among others. All these things is in general a challenge which we cannot do by our simple C++ coded program. So different computer vendors, operating system manufacturers, etc., they came into a single forum and made a board called OpenMP Architecture Review Board and developed an application program interface API which will support multi-platform shared memory multiprocessing programming, so that you can launch the threads, run the threaded programs, etc. And this is created by a group of developers from different industries, so it works over different hardware, different operating system, etc. And this API, OpenMP, it's again a free software and open source free software, and people can use and download it. It contains compiler directives, library routines, as well as environment variables for shared memory parallelization. It provides a portable and scalable platform for programmers to develop their parallel programs. And once you have a legacy code, we are talking about legacy codes. For scientific computing codes, they are very algorithm dependent. Sometimes a sophisticated algorithm is used, sometimes a novel algorithm is proposed, some changes are done. These codes develop in research groups over years. And then using OpenMP, you can identify the parallel parts and write OpenMP constructs there and convert that part into multi-threaded parallel. So that is the advantage of OpenMP, that you can use existing scientific computing codes and convert into parallel codes. Identify the locations where it's computationally expensive and can be parallelizable and convert it to parallel codes. So how OpenMP works? It is at different level. If we see at the hardware level, there is a shared address space and many processors are connected with them. At the system level, there are some runtime libraries of OpenMP, as well as, because it has it is coming in conjunction with the operating system itself, operating system provides support for shared memory and multi-threading. Beyond that, you have the programmer layer. This is the layer in which a programmer can come and modify the software. He can specify the OpenMP library functions, he can specify the directives and compilers, environment variables, etc. After that, after doing this, you get an OpenMP program and the user finds an application and runs it. So finally, to user, it can come as a code. If we are talking about ANSYS parallel ANSYS versions for FEM solution, if it's an OpenMP parallel code, finally with user it will come that do you want to pick 4 processors and do you want to run it parallel in 4 processors? You will click on that button. At the code of this, OpenMP is identifying that this region can be distributed to different processors and they are parallelizing. So we have a sample OpenMP program. So this is a C program, and there will be number of threads launched, and each thread will itself write hello world. So once you run it in 8 processors, and you have to specify the number of threads. So you specify the number of threads, 8 threads. So all these processors will independently write hello world from thread 0, thread 1, thread 2 through thread 7. So how does it happen? First, you have to call the OpenMP header. It's a library, API library header file. And then you have to define that this part of the program is parallel. That means all the processors will independently execute different threads. There are runtime functions which finds the number of the thread. Each thread is numbered from 0 to 1. And After the brace is over, after this brace is over, the parallel pragma OMP parallel is open-empty construct. The parallel region is over, and if you write anything, that will be executed as a sequential program. So if I specify number of threads as A at 8, it will be launched in 8 processors. Eight threads. Let us say threads equal to processor, but we can actually launch more threads than the processors. So group of threads will go to different processors. But if I run it in 8 processors, each will write hello world. If I run it less number of processors, it will write hello world from the respective thread ID. And this idea is taken. Now, if we have to work on a mathematical problem, we'll execute the same line, but from thread ID, etc., we pin the lines to different part of the memory, and it will work on that. So the programming model is that a master node, if I see here, where we start the program before calling pragma, and if I write anything, etc., here it is a single processor code. Initially, only one node is active, and now once you write the parallel region, then multiple nodes are active and they launch different threads. So a master node with thread ID 0 is active throughout the program. In the parallel zone, when we put the fog, then it's a parallel zone. The master thread is active, but along with that, threads go to other threads are launched and they go to other processors, and we can control what is the number of threads, etc. And once the parallel zone is over, so once this loop, this zone region is over, once the parallel zone is over, the other threads are destroyed and again master thread works. At different locations, based on the problem size, etc., we can launch different number of threads. Also, one thread can branch into again another level of parallelism, another sets of threads. That is called a nested parallelization. So if you think one thread is bestowed with too much work, it can again break down into fork into multiple threads, and that. So this is basically OpenMP parallel model. At the region where it's compute heavy, we launch more number of threads. Now, one of the issues in this operation is that all data is by default shared data. So each processor can see its own data, each data. However, because you are writing, when you write OpenMP program, you define a zone parallel and then write your program there. Say this ID. This ID is the ID of the thread. If to different processor, if it's a shared memory, then all the processors will see same value of the ID. So if first processor gets at ID 0, even if you try to modify it by other processors, first processor is already written, there will be a conflict. So because the same line of code is executed by multiple processors according to their thread ID, there can be some of the variables which is similarly declared for all the processors, but are differently valued by different threads. And that is why all the threads are bound to use same shared memory space. However, so any update by a thread is visible to all threads. However, some memory items may be needed by each thread, which are locally required to do calculation. Though their name is same with the other threads variable name, but it is supposed to do something which is very specific to this local thread. And these are not required outside the parallel region. In the parallel region only they are required. So OpenMP has a provision of providing private variables. So you have seen in the last example, ID was by default a private variable. That is that you have a shared memory space. However, each thread has some small space where they can load their private variable. If you are writing an OpenMP C program, any variable declared only used within the parallel loop is by default a private variable. All threads can independently change their values. They behave as local data elements. In C, any variable declared only inside parallel loop in private, but if you are in Fortran, then all variables are implicitly shared, so you have to explicitly mention that these are private variables and will be deployed for the calculation. However, it is a good practice because there can be confusion that shared means everybody can see that. Private means if one thread changes that variable, other threads do not see that change. So it's a good practice to explicitly specify during the OpenMP parallel call that these are the shared variables and these are the private variables. Now we will see an example of parallel construct. Say there is a for loop for I is equal to 0 to n, xi plus is equal to 1 n. If n is a large number, there will be multiple loops over it. If we write pragma OMP for, that means this will be parallelized among many threads. Among how many threads? That thread number we have specified in the environment variable or during execution of the program. So some parts of the iteration, if we consider 0 to n, total n number of iterations of this, some parts of this iteration go to thread 1, thread 2 will take care of some parts of the iteration, etc. So instead of one single loop of 0 to n, it will be small number of iterations in each of the threads. And of course, you can see that I becomes a private variable here. Because each thread will run, I is equal to 0 to some small value of n, each thread will run on small numbers and different numbers of I. So I becomes a private variable. Also, you can put a if clause here that if this n is satisfied, so if n is greater than some number, then only this will be parallelized. If n is not, then this region is not parallelized and there will be a loop only from I to 0. Then there will be a single loop running in a single processor. This OMP for directive parallelizes a for loop. In Fortran, it is OMP do. It will be a do loop that will be parallelized. It does the load balancing too. It also defines that how many threads will go to, how many iterations will go to how many threads, and there should be a balance so that none of the processor is sitting idle. Moreover, when we run the for region, it has to be within a parallel region. When we parallelize a do loop, first we have to say that this loop is a parallel loop. Then within the parallel region, it can parallelize a do loop. So the for loop, OMP for, can come within OMP parallel. However, if the iterations are not independent, say x depends on previous value of x, then you cannot parallelize it. Then if you parallelize it, you will get some error. That this loop is not independent and x2 cannot be calculated in processor 1 where x1 is not calculated there. If x1 is not available, x2 cannot be calculated. Only if the threads are independent, only if each calculation done, irrespective of whether other calculations are done, then you are already finished, then you can use parallel constants. Some of the other work sharing directives are OMP for, we have seen OMP sections. It tells that this section of the program, if program is divided into multiple sections, different sections can go to different processors by OMP sections. If we write OMP signal, that means that even if we call it in parallel region, it will not be executed parallelly. One by one processors will execute that. Only one processor will execute that, others cannot do. Only single processor that will be executed. If we write OMP critical, then even if this is inside the parallel region, this will not occur parallelly. One processor will do that, it finish. The next processor and come and do this same work. So this will be repeated by all the processors in one by one. So there will be some loss of parallelization. Now we will see a vector dot product. What is that? There is a 1000-dimensional vector A and B, and their product is written as a vector C. So this is a for loop. C is equal to A plus B. C is equal to A into B. Different elements of C is calculated in this for loop, and this for loop is operated 1000 times. So sorry, not this loop. If I try to this loop, there is a mistake. Not this loop, but this loop will be parallelized. If we do not parallelize it, for 1000 by 1000 vector multiplication, dot product takes a 0.0001 second in 48 core 2.2 gigahertz here processor with 192 gigahertz. Of course, you can see if we do not parallelize it, even if we run it in 48 core machine, only one core or only one processor will execute that. So others will not execute that. Others will be sitting like it. If you have a parallel code, then only different processors will do it in parallel. So now if I parallelize it, what we have to do, we have to write that this loop will be a parallel loop. So write pragma OMP parallel for, and reduction means all the processors will write to the same location C is equal to private I. Reduction plus addition of this is equal to private I. And once we parallelize it, we see that as we change up number of processors, the computing time changes. With 2 processor, computing time is 0.00137. With 4, it increases. With 8, it even increases. Interesting. This is interesting. We are multiplying into 1000 by 1000 vector and adding them up. In single processor, it takes less time, but as we are increasing more processor, it is taking more time. This is due to the fact that the overall computation is very small. Once we parallelize it, once we introduce many processors to be active there, they communicate and synchronize in between them too much, which kills the performance. But if we take a larger problem, say we take 1000 and 1 million, n is equal to 1 million. In single processor, it takes 0.007723. In 2 processor, it takes 0.004, so it improves. In 4 processor, time again reduces. In 8 processor, time again further reduces. So if we have larger computing, then we can see the benefit of using parallel. If we have smaller computing part, where the computing itself is very small, the communication overhead, etc., is so large that you will see a overkilling of the computational efficiency. It will be a big. So whenever you are, I was discussing this at the beginning also, at the first lecture also, whenever you have to parallelize any program, you must see or run any parallel program, you must see that you are running a large problem. If you are running a small problem, then the actual computing time is small, rather overhead times will be more, and you will see a negative effect of parallelization. Performance improves if n is large. Now we go to matrix vector product, and I'll stop OpenMP discussion here. We go to matrix vector product because this is used rigorously in matrix solvers. What we did here, then it was a simple matrix vector product program. If you do not consider the pragma line, in single processor also it will run. It is a single processor program that it will take a matrix for each elements of the ith row, multiply with the corresponding element of the column of corresponding row of the vector V, and sum it up, and this sum will come as the corresponding row of the product vectors. And now if you have to parallelize it, you write that this do loop, there are 2 loops, one I is equal to 0 to indeed, and another is j is equal to 0 to indeed. The above I loop is parallelized. It is parallelized with parallel for, so this loop will be parallelized, and some of these will be private ID, and apart from that, everything is shared. It's very simple actually. You just go through some of the OpenMP examples which are available in many places. I've given some note also, Tim Matson's book, etc. And then add the OpenMP line. If you have your older code, you can add this OpenMP construct and make it parallel. Now, if you see the performance, so threads are now there are 2 nested parallelization. One is over I, one is over j. If I write simple parallel loop, threads will be launched over I only. If we have to launch threads both over I and j, there is a collapse option. We will not discuss that. Now, if we see the serial computing time for n is equal to 1000, in single processor it gives 0.007 seconds. In 2 processor it gives 0.0042, 4 processor 0.0028, 8 processor 0.00145. And why we can see in general a better performance than the 1000 by 1000 vector product. Why? Because in vector product, when you are taking dot product, it's one element of the vector into one element of the other vector, and that will be added with the dot product. So it is only operation if there are n by n vectors, the operation is of the order of 2n. Here there are n rows and n columns, so the operation is of the order of n squared. So the computation is anyway large, and therefore the effect of parallelization can be seen here. for small computing, parallelization doesn't help. For large computing, it helps. That was the point. Now, so we discussed about shared memory. One of the issues with shared memory is that it still uses the same memory space where all the processors are running. However, if we have a very large matrix, then it might be difficult to store the matrix in one single location. But if we solve for accurate solutions, the distance between the points will reduce, therefore number of points will increase, and the matrix will be very large. The problems will be storage of the large matrix. If it's a dense matrix, if sparse matrix, most of the things are zero, we can use some efficient storage. If it is dense, then n square and memory elements have to be stored, and that can be quite large. Due to large number of operations, numerical errors are large, so direct solvers will not work. Iterative solvers, even if we use Skylab space, if the number of rows are n, at least n number of iterations are required. And in each iteration, there will be matrix vector product of the size of n square. So overall, there will be again n cube total, n iterations, n square operations, near n cube operations total, and large on the large matrix that operation will be. So we can see how parallel computing can help here. One idea is data decomposition, which we are discussing here. The different part, finally, it will boil down to the matrix vector product. Different rows of the matrix will be multiplied with the vector and by different processors. It can be done both in shared and distributed. However, you still need to store that large matrix, and on different rows, different processors are active. The remedy to that is a task decomposition or domain decomposition. Distribute the memory or distributed memory MPI programming. Break the main matrix or vector problem, matrix solution problem into many sub-problems and distribute it among different processors. Different processors are taking different parts of the sub-problem. And this will be using distributed memory MPI programming. So one of the idea of domain decomposition is that if you have a large domain over which you are solving equation, break it into several small subdomains and write the matrix vector matrix equation for each of the subdomains. So if you have 1000 by 400 size geometry, you will get 400,000 into 400,000 matrix. But each of the small domain will have 400 into 250 matrix, so you get only 400 into 250 square size matrix. So overall problem size increases. Also, the number of rows in each sub-problem is smaller. So if different computers work in parallel, they are working on a smaller problem, therefore they can work fast, they can concurrently work fast. However, the difficulty will be that we are distributing it into different processors, so there is an issue with the boundary condition. We know that differential equations cannot be solved by using boundary conditions. So even if we convert it into matrix problem, we need boundary condition. But if we break it down into sub-problems, what are the boundary conditions here? And that is done by dynamically taking the neighboring domain's values at the boundary conditions and updating them. So there is another loop of iteration among the domains where they update the boundary values. And this is the basic concept of domain decomposition. It can be shown that though there is one extra layer of iteration among the processors and also requirement of data transfer, because its boundary, its value at this location will be the boundary point for this location. So we need to transfer data because it's not a single same shared piece of memory. It's a different computers with their different RAMs. The data is written. It has to be transferred by the network cable. So it requires the good amount of data transfer also. However, you can handle really large problems using domain decomposition technique. In some cases, when generating the grids, people generate it as block structured grid. That means, if not Cartesian, but near Cartesian rectangular meshes in each block, and they are connected over the blocks, and data transfer happens over the blocks to ensure continuity. This is one idea about domain decomposition. There can be non-overlapping domains. Domains are only touching each other, there can be overlapping domains where some of the points are common in between the domains. What is the advantage of overlapping domains? Because these points are common, solution is same in these few points, so the degree of continuity is more. You get more smooth solution across the boundaries. Maybe use to ensure higher level of continuity. The idea of domain decomposition is distribute the domain into several subdomains. So if you have to solve, say, conduction equation over this L-shaped geometry, we will make several subdomains and write the matrix equation. The differential equation will be converted to matrix equation independently in each subdomain. Only connection between the subdomains will be the interdomain boundary values. This lines can order this. Now we have to propose an algorithm to solve each domain independently. We can use SOR, we can use YCG, etc. Matrix equation in each subdomain will be solved independently. Then the interdomain boundary values will be transferred. And we impose the updated boundary value. Once it solves this subdomain, it updates the values here. Whatever was taken as boundary condition here from the last available values here is now updated. So now take the update, transfer the data across the domains and take the updated boundary conditions and solve it. And do it till you get a final convergent solution, including the subdomains, that the values at the subdomains, which is exchange between two processors, will have also converged. They are also not changing with global increasing number of iterations. So also the mathematically this is known as Schwarz multiplicative procedure, where different subdomains are independently solved and there is an overlap among the subdomains. So when we are solving this subdomain, this is acting as my boundary condition, this is acting as my boundary condition, which are internal points of the neighboring subdomains. So there is an overlap among the subdomains and this overlap lines acts as the boundary condition. That means the value obtained from within this subdomain, if it's connected to a different computer, must come to the computer attached to this subdomain, and this will act as the boundary. So you need to transfer data across computers for doing that. The idea is choose an initial guess to the solution, iterate till convergence. Within each subdomain, you solve the equation. So you have to converge in terms of the boundary values. You are changing boundary values, taking the from the previous subdomain, neighboring subdomain, and substituting it in the present subdomain. And after each iteration, the internal values of the neighboring subdomain is changing, so boundary conditions are changing. Interdomain boundaries are changing. So you have to iterate over the interdomain boundary values, and then solve within each subdomain, update the values at the boundary, and till convergence in all subdomain you have to keep on solving. So it's not only is convergence of the equation in each matrix in subdomain, but it also requires a convergence among all subdomains. And what will be the convergence? It's usually we have to probe the boundary value and see if it's converged there. Even if we do another iteration in one of the subdomains and boundary value changes, does it change the solution of the other subdomain? So this is, in some sense, a global convergence is required. So the basic steps of domain decomposition is divide the domain into number of subdomains. Domain overlaps are allowed such that full row equation of each internal point is available, such that it can provide the right boundary conditions to each internal point. Start with the global guess. Assume global is some guess value and start with that. This is very important, that values should be consistent across the boundaries. Guess values should be consistent across the boundaries. Update the solution at every subdomain locally. Consider interdomain boundaries as the known value boundary values, interdomain values, which are coming with the last updated solution value at of the previous boundary, of the neighboring subdomain. So each of the subdomain can be solved in parallel. Process 0 is solving subdomain 1, process 1 is solving subdomain 2, so on. So each are in parallel solving different subdomains. And then after solution, you get the internal values change, and there is an overlap between the subdomains. So one of its internal point is the boundary point of the neighboring subdomain. And do it through MPI based message passing calls that from one subdomain some value will go to the next subdomain, or the processor attached to the next subdomain and attaches work as the boundary. And then iterate over the domains till you get global convergence. So convergence in within only one subdomain is not sufficient. It should convert across all the subdomains. And for this, for synchronization, for transferring boundary value data from one processor to another processor, we need an API which is known as message passing interface. It is a module for message passing, transferring data from one processor to another processor through the network cable. There is a software for that, and it has library functions. It can be used with C, C++, Fortran, etc. It is in short a message passing application programming interface together with protocols and semantics for how it behaves in any application. This is designed for parallel computers, clusters, heterogeneous networks, etc. Whenever there is distributed memory programming, MPI is going to help there. For shared memory, its counterpart is OpenMP. MPI's feature is MPI small. Small means if you only know 6 basic functions of MPI, you can make any program parallelized with that. You already have a developed program, you use 6 basic functions of MPI, like MPI send, MPI receive, MPI init, MPI com rank, MPI com size, MPI finalize. With this, you can make any program parallelized. MPI is large also. There are extensive functionality, many other function calls in MPI apart from this. And for different other purpose, in order to get things more efficiently, you might require to use those functions. It is scalable. If it helps one processor to talk to other processor, and as you increase number of processors, speed can improve using MPI. It is flexible. This is very important, that over different platforms of MPI work uniformly. If from your Windows platform you sit down to a Linux system, you do not need to change the program. The program is same across platforms, and of course it's an open source piece of software. So these are the basic functions, except MPI COM-world, others are the function calls. MPI COM-world is a virtual communicator, is the group of the processors available. But apart from that, with these 6 functions, you can parallelize any. You can initialize the MPI environment, find the total number of processes working on the same program, put a rank on each of the processes, and then for data exchange, MPI send will send one data from the other processor, the other will receive the data using MPI receive. These are the few basic MPI functions. Now there is another important thing. When we use MPI to data transfer, boundary values are updated as internal points in one processor, and that will go to the other processor and work in its boundary. So there is a sending and receiving process of MPI. There will be one MPI call for sending data to the other MPI, to the other processor. And the receiving processor, each processor has to do its own thing. Receiving processor will execute, so that inside the program, for OpenMP and shared memory, whatever your updates in the memory, programmer didn't need to bother about that. The way you have written the program, it will update the memory. But in MPI, you have to send data from one processor to other processor. So programmer has to specify that now this processor will identify data of this location, this size, and transfer it to the processor of this ID. The other processor receiving will, for that, programmer has to also run a program that this processor which is receiving, given its ID, etc., will receive data from the sending processor. And it sees that the send receive is usually a time-consuming operation. Some time is spent because data is identified, sent through the network cable, reaches the other processor, etc. Along with that, for finding out whether this is the right processor to send and whether the receiving processor tells that it can send it, there is an idle time, there is a latency. And so whenever you write MPI program for MPI calls, there is an array time. There is a latency in MPI calls. So if we run an MPI program with actually small problem, then this latency can be more and kill the performance. Apart from send receive, there are collective communications that one processor sends data to all other processors. Data is taken from different processors and collected by one processor. All these collective communications are there, and these are just some idea about what this. If you write this MPI function, this will happen across the processors in your C++ or Fortran code. So this is just an idea how MPI works. But in order to learn it, you have to spend more time and look for more resources. So nevertheless, using MPI, we can parallelize a code. We'll break down a large matrix equation into small submatrix equations. Within each submatrix equation, and that is based on the geometric problem. Each submetric equation, it can solve it independently within and concurrently. Many processors will solve their submetric equations. And for solution of that, one iteration is fine. So when you do next iteration, you need the updated value at the interdomain boundary. And for that, you need MPI. Well, so there are many demonstrations in many places of MPI-based programs. You can see that in a nutshell, MPI works like this. So what are the key points in MPI programming? First, you have to initialize parallel environment. That processors should know that they are working for a parallel problem. They will distribute the data accordingly on that. You need to do load balancing, so that each processor, if you are doing domain decomposition, each domain is nearly of same size. Each processor is getting same amount of work. Because after doing an iteration within the subdomain, it has to transfer data. So if the other processor is not ready to receive, it cannot finish its data transfer. So it has to sit idle. So in order to minimize that idle time, all the processors should get equal amount of data. Calculation will be done in each domain. There are some locations when it needs to do synchronization, that find if all the processors are at sync. Again, it adds latency. There are communication issues because data will physically go from one processor to the other processor. The receiving processor will receive this data sent by the other processor. And all will be done by execution of MPI calls. And there can be bottleneck in data transfer. There is a very interesting case where both the processors are trying to give data to each other, because both of them share a common boundary, but nobody is receiving it, and it gives deadlock. Program stalls here. So these things programmer has to take care of. And in case you get poor performance using an MPI program, you can be really skeptic whether the data transfer calls are right, whether there is any bottleneck, whether load balancing is done properly, whether there are too many synchronization steps, etc. So all of this add overlay to the MPI program. So here is a scalability study. We solved the conduction equation in two processors. You can see that the solution is continuous across the domain boundary. In 4 processors, we solved it. Also, you can see it is continuous. And now, if we run it in 100 matrix with in 100 total 100 points, 10 by 10 points, 100 by 100 matrix. So when we run it in a single subdomain, it's a single processor, it's one domain only 100 by 100 matrix. When you run it two processor, it's 15 to 100, 5000 by 5000. Sorry, 50 by 50 matrix. So the matrix size is very small. It does a lot of calculation, but also data transfer, etc. Takes significant amount of time. So you can see here the time is 3 into 10 to the power minus 3 seconds. Here with increase in processor, time actually increases. Why? Because computing time is anywhere small. Along with that, a substantial amount of data transfer and synchronization overhead is coming and the time is increasing. When you do it for processor, there is more data transfer. Here, only one data is sent from this processor to this processor. This is receiving only one data. When you do 4 processor, this processor is receiving data from the left one as well as from the right one. There are 2 boundaries, so more data transfer is there. Therefore, even if the problem computing time reduces, data transfer time increases, and the overall effect is there. If we increase 400 by 400, we can see from 2.8 to 2.25. With increasing from going from one processor to 2 processor, computing time is little bit reducing. But once you go to 4 processors again, because data transfer is more, data transfer time is more, synchronization can be more, we see that computational time increases. So again and again I'm telling you, if you have a small problem, you cannot run a parallel. It is tricky. If you go to a larger problem, 10 to the power 5 problem, now you can see that even up to 24 processors, your computing time reduces. So if you have a large problem, then you can go to large number of processors. If you have small problem, ideally you should not run it in parallel mode. But even if you are running it parallel mode, you should run it in small number of processors. If you go to larger number of processors, the performance will be different. So, two, three things we collect from here. One is that in order to utilize multiple processors, we need a code which can run over multiple processors. For shared memory, that can be done using OpenMP. For distributed memory, we need MPI. Whereas, once you think of the MPI program, that we divide it into several sub-problems, this is one way. There can be other variants also, other different ways of parallelism problem also. Each sub-problem is solved in one processor, and then they exchange boundary data. So this data transfer has to be done through MPI. However, once they exchange boundary data, then the boundary value changes. Therefore, there is another requirement of going back to the iterations. So the number of iterations or loops of the iterations are actually increasing. Many loops. It's not only local solution. It is iterating over the boundaries also, over the boundary updates also. So many iteration loops. The third thing to observe is that even if we have a parallel program, etc., if we run on a small problem, be it MPI, be it OpenMP, wherever, the computing time increases, the overall time increases with increasing number of processors. Because the overheads, communication, synchronization, etc. there. But if I go to large number of rows, then it justifies using large number of processors. So here we solve a CFD problem with 3 million grid points in block structure mesh, and we go up to 128 processors. Ideally, as we increase the number of processors, which is called ideal speed up, the computing time, the computational speed, that is how many iterations you get in 1 second. Computational speed should increase that way. However, there is something called latency. Latency is the extra time that I am giving for the parallel of pull-up. There are some components of latency, three components of latency. One is due to as we set the parallel environment, that will take some amount of time. The computers have to be many processors have to know that they are working on the same problem. So to initialize the parallel environment, there will be some. Then for transfer of data across the processors, and it is really a slow process because data goes to network cable from one processor to other. Within the computer, data goes to PCI bus, which is very fast, but network cable is much slow. So it requires some extra time on that. And then in case you need to synchronize, one processor needs to wait till others have finished their job. This synchronization step is also adds over it. Now, as number of processors increase, many processors have to synchronize, the overall synchronization effort increases. The overall initialization time increases because we need to make many processors and make a communicator group using this processor, which is known as communicator among these processors. This also requires time. Also, data transfer requires more time because there are many processors. If one processor has to send data to two different processors because it has set two boundaries, it will do it one by one. So as we increase number of processors, the boundaries across which data is transferred is increasing, and the sequentiality waiting for doing data transfer is also increasing. So in that sense, latency increases as we increase number of processors. So should we use large number of processors? Yes, if our problem is large enough, if the computing time is large enough, that latency time is if not negligible, nominal with respect to the computing time, then it makes a sense to use large number of processors. But for your small problem, if you are running a small program, you should not ideally use parallel programming. Even if you are using it, use for small number of processors. So actually, very large systems like what Japan or China have, we are showing, we can only use that once we have large problem as well as efficient solvers which can do the kind of things correctly in the large problem. That is in both in terms of the matrix solver or basic algorithm as well as in terms of implementation. I mean, we do not have a large computer. That means we cannot do parallel programming. It's not right. It's a step. If we have large computers, we should be equipped with right software, right algorithm, and right problem also. So that is one part of the NISM initiative, that it doesn't only focus on setting the infrastructure, but sets on the application, sets a goal on R&D, sets a goal on training also, so that everything comes together and you understand how you can utilize your resource to solve very large problems and get some very important science or physics-based data. If you do not have resources, you cannot do that. Even if you have resources, if you do not know how to do it correctly, you cannot do that. So both things will come shaking hands together. Well, we come to the end of this presentation. We have distributed our shared and distributed memory programming, matrix operations, and the composition method, and we put some thought on the performance. It is important that the latency is reduced for solving large problem. How that can be reduced? By efficiently mapping the tasks to different processors, minimizing data transfer overhead, minimizing synchronization overhead, etc. There will be some example even in the following lecture by Professor Raha. There is an example, there is a case study that how efficiently the system can be used in distributed computing, so that large problems can be solved without encountering. Okay, so I come to the end of this today's discussion. From my side, there will be another talk from 4:30, on which I say Professor Raha will give you an example of reaction diffusion equation using large HPC resources. And now, if anybody has any question, etc., you can raise your hand. And Rahul, can you make everybody presenter?
Yes, sir. Doing.
So that they can ask the questions one by one. Yes.
Done, sir.
Yeah, thanks. So, Hasim, Yatharth Hasim, you have some question.
Yes, sir. Sir, great talk. I just wanted to know the codes that you showed here were native C codes, and the code was written itself. So I was just wondering, is there a good C++ or C library that has already pre-built wrappers around these matrices that we can use directly?
Sure. So tomorrow we will give you some introduction of the available parallel libraries.
Okay.
Okay. So for example, there are BLAS type of libraries over which parallelization has been done.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, these are very complex, and for simple programs you can write it yourself. But when you go to complex programs, then there are expert groups who do it better than you. There are 50 people working for 10 years. They will definitely do it better than you. So we use those libraries.
Right. I think, sir, you said BLAS, so Eigen is one of them, right?
Eigen is one of them.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll discuss about PETC and Hyper, which are efficiently parallelized libraries. LeanPack is also parallelized in some sense. So, I mean, if you are a user, you really do not want to spend much time on developing these libraries. You know what is there, but you rely on people who have already developed these libraries. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Saurish Beda. Others, yes.
Sir, can we use OpenMPI in Abacus using Python scripting?
No, Python, OpenMP is for C, C++, and Fortran. The reason is that OpenMP is for actually for scientific computing work, and when OpenMP was developed, then people were using C, C++, Fortran-based codes only. So the goal was parallelizing legacy codes, basically. But in Python, you can use shared memory infrastructure, but you don't need to use OpenMP. Python itself has the wrappers. It itself has the library functions through which you can multi-processor.
Okay, sir. And the second question is, domain decomposition is same as boundary surface decomposition, like decomposing the displacement field on a boundary. Are they same thing?
I'm not aware of boundary surface decomposition. I can try look into it and tell you later. I'm not aware of this.
Okay. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Can I ask the question, sir?
Please, please.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, sir. Actually, sir, in the Hello World program, the thread ID 0 is coming in the second last. Basically, it should come in the beginning. Can you just
Let me see.
clarify it?
Let me see. Oh, I actually skipped that part. Okay. So when you run, and this is an interesting example that I skipped it. You see that when you run the Hello World program, first it is written by 1, then it is written by 3, then 7, then 0 comes. Here first 3 writes it, then 0 writes it, so it's not synchronized. So what happens that each processor is independently executing this line. It's not a loop. It's not a loop over the threads. It is each processor is independently executing one of the threads, and they are independently writing out to the string. So there is a randomness. If processor 1 is slightly faster than processor 0, it will write first. Then processor 3 is probably the next fastest one, it will write then. You cannot make it synchronized. There are some calls. There is an order call through which you can make it synchronized, but that will take synchronization. There is an unsynchronized writing. So each processors are independently writing it, and they can write it in any order based on the slightest difference of time in between them. So it shows that they are actually independent.
Okay, sir. But thread ID is also it's like a normal this thing because.
So I ran it in 8 processors. If you run it in one processor, then it will be a loop.
Yeah, because this is what was the line I saw in the another slide where we have mentioned it as a node processor. So node that thread 0 is starting first.
Right?
Yeah, in the same slide you just here I mean the next slide.
Oh, thread ID 0 is active. Thread 0 is active throughout, but it doesn't mean it goes to, it is pinned to one particular processor. It doesn't mean that this processor is the fastest processor. Thread 0 is active throughout, but here all the threads are parallelly executing one region. This can do it faster than this thread, and it will write it out. And they're doing it independently. In the serial region, only thread 0 is only active. Here all the threads are active and they're doing it in parallel. And you cannot synchronize their work. If you at all can do that, you have to put an extra synchronization step. This is non-synchronized.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Professor. Good evening,
Yes.
sir. Am I audible, sir? Yeah.
Yes.
First of all, Professor, extremely good presentation. Thanks a lot for educating us about parallel processors. Sir, I don't know whether you have taken this in your lecture. My internet connection was not very stable. So my doubt is you have taken a lot of CFD simulations for this presentation. So, because that OpenMPI works in C++ and C and Fortran, I wanted to ask you whether it is also applicable for OpenFOAM simulations, like simulations.
OpenFOAM is parallelized. OpenFOAM has both shared memory and domain decomposition based parallelization. So I think you need to look into OpenFOAM manuals. You can do that. You can run both shared and distributed memory.
Okay, one more doubt, sir. I think it had been earlier asked, but I just wanted to know more about it. Is it available for Python, sir? Like, does OpenMPI?
No, for Python, you do not need OpenMP. Python itself has parallelization constants.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Roy.
But for MPI, yes, for Python MPI, I think MPI is still required.
MPI is required.
If you need to talk across processor, MPI is the main available. But if you need many processes to write to a same location, then Python itself can be required.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much.
Kundan Singh or Saurish Beda. Okay. Anybody else? Well, then I conclude this session, and in yes, anybody to talk anything? No.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
We have any WhatsApp group for this training program?
No. We do not have any WhatsApp.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll in this presentation, and in 15 minutes we have another presentation where case study on reaction diffusion equation for large systems will be showcased to you by Professor Somen.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.